Добрий день.
Hello, dear participants of today's event in Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Those who came and those who are here, because we can see that you are seriously interested in this issue, the president's elections in Poland, and that's natural. In terms of what country is considered, that is Ukrainian partner, and it's a very important country for further safety issues and development of partnership, and of course, allies in NATO and EU. One day, hopefully, that will happen. I would just like to say a few words at the beginning. First of all, about our participants. I would like to say that this initiative came to Ukrainian Crisis Media Center from Mr. Yevhen Makhta, who said that, it will be very correct thing to make this briefing without waiting for the results of the second tour, because it will give the opportunity, not just to make some prognosis. I don't think that we will be able today to answer the question of the exact numbers of the second tour, but to show the tendencies that are already visible and also what we can expect. Stanislav Zhelykhovskyi and Anatoly Kurnosov, they are in this topic of the president's elections because you know them as people who are international experts in political issues, candidates of political sciences. And Anatoly Kurnosov is in the doctrine. He is engaged in different issues, but in addition to foreign affairs, also regional policy in terms of Poland, and it's a professional interest. So we have people here who are, in spite of the fact that the attention from Polish elections were captured both by Donald Trump and the agreements in Istanbul, the negotiations in Istanbul, and also the conflict, India and Pakistan. But nevertheless, in any case, there are people who were kind of following the events. And I am very interested not just to hear about the numbers, but it's very easy to see the results. But what does it mean? What is the situation? That's very important. I'm the head of the board of Ukraine Crisis Media Center, maybe as the former head of Ukrainian-Polish President Committee from Ukrainian side. It's not the new issue for me. The Poland and also the ambassador in Washington and Poland, we were initiating certain issues. So in the period of elections, certain topics just to make them as bilateral communication. Now I am not working in this field, but I can say only from my previous experience that the position of the president of Poland in Poland, it is much more for Ukraine. It means much more for Ukraine than maybe inside of Poland, because Poland, just like Ukraine, it's a parliamentary republic, or a parliamentary and presidential. There's a lot of similar things, and similar in terms of that the president is the head of the state. These are the first elections in Poland during this, where it's the important moment. I think it's very important to say a few words, and I don't think that my colleagues will touch upon these issues because it's a general point of view. And general picture, as a matter of fact, during the war in Europe, assessment, how the right and left powers here, or radical powers, how they can impact the country. The countries where there are elections, Romania, and I have to mention, with huge tension, we were expecting the results of elections, and it is good. But the signals came, and very serious, from the other candidate who lost. and he had Putin's portrait over his head. And the same, like today we will discuss that. We have such persons in Poland, and Poland also showed some, in my opinion, dangerous tendencies. And, well, now there's a big shift because they gained quite a lot of voices, and the right, well, not the right, but more like the, I don't know, not the radical, I won't say that, it's more like the right sector. Okay, so as for the perimeter of Ukraine, there are elections, and in these elections, will try to impose its impact. Well, Russia is trying to cause some impact and to work via their agents. You heard about their Ukrainian claim, the main department of intelligence of Ukraine. They were talking about their Operation Doppelganger that is imitating the websites of Western, like, magazines, media, and imitating websites or web pages in social networks of people who are trusted and via whom you can just give fake information or some fraud, type of fraud. Well, yesterday I don't know whether it's because of this or not, but in my case it's a Facebook copy. And then they start going to Germany, Poland, Romania, and people were calling from there. And, well, they are trying to disseminate information under a fake account. So there's a lot of examples. Maybe we will hear those. But, well, for Ukraine, first of all, the process of Euro integration. We are thinking about the 2029, when we think that there will be aggravation of the situation, maybe attack of Russia. In the process of war with Russia, they continues our neighbors, these countries, they are very important for us. And I still want to say, why were we considering like Romania, why we are looking at Poland, because these countries that are impacting not just the amount of weapons supplied, but also logistics and the production of weapons and localization. So there's a lot of questions about their position. And Romanians, I would like to mention today, well, I have such an information, we need to confirm that yet, but the president of Romania has already told in one of his first information, he will allow to hit the accidental, so to say, drones, Russian drones that are used against Ukraine on their territory. So he will allow to hit these drones on their territory. And we will wait for their actions. And it is obvious that Poland is a critically important country for us, both in terms of some safety unions for the future and also in terms of the prognosis as of today of military aspects as well, because you all perfectly know that the so-called trainings, Russian and Belarusian, in 2025 will happen at the Polish border. And traditionally, they are happening, but there's just one moment when they were taking place before the invasion to Ukraine. Then territorially, they were in a bit different location. And now, as far as I know, for today, the divisions that are formed, they are formed closer to Suwałki and not closer to the border with Ukraine. I would like to remind you that, like with Ukraine, it's not the topic of our discussion, but when we had such situation with Ukraine, so it was the Russian military bases that were created, Baranovichi, Zhlobin, that is these Soviet bases, and Wagner were located there in kind of more located to this direction, closer to this direction with the railway to this direction. And now it's a bit different aspect. Of course, yeah, Belarus, etc., but the intention, we can see clearly Poland. Well, we can't say. Maybe that will be Ukraine. But as of now, we should not stop paying attention to it. And it's obvious that from the future events, the political situation in Poland depends a lot on that. For Ukraine, obviously, the general position, I would like to say that presidential elections, that's not it. There are like parliamentary elections and the position of the country in general, the parliament, especially not just Sejm, but also Senate. They are impacting a lot. So my colleagues know the details, but even the moment that we saw like using Ukraine in the topic of Polish elections, I truly hope that it will come to an end, because all those blockades at the borders and all the moments that we're using the issues of Ukraine, they're not helpful for sure. I truly hope that this period will come to an end and we will work with the Polish side with the key issues, safety in Europe, and we are all together under this hit. Ukraine directly and Poland might be the next one. The second is our big opportunities, in my opinion, to unite our efforts for a joint role in future European safety together with Great Britain and Baltic countries. And the third moment is now economic situation. And actually for Ukraine and Poland, for our people, it is very important to use this potential of interaction in order to improve our just economic situation. And a separate issue, your integration. It's a separate issue because Poland, till recent time, I haven't heard the official claims, like not to help Ukraine, right? These are not the claims that Poland is the advocate of Ukraine, but still a very good position. What I can't say about some of the words of the candidates in these elections. And the last thing I would like to mention is, still the region is connected in terms of information, in terms of people, and what is happening in Romania is visible in Poland. What is happening in Hungary is seen in Romania. By the way, when mentioning Romania, the diaspora, Hungarian diaspora, voted for a pro-European candidate, and the Prime Minister of Hungary supported, so to say, the pro-Russian candidate. That's a very interesting situation, and we will see how that will impact, like the development of situation in Romania and in Poland, most of all, on the elections in the future in Hungary and Slovakia. So, we are discussing much more than just the results of the first tour, and our speakers today will allow us, to talk deeper about that than the things that you will find in the newspapers about the results or what you will find. And also we will have the expert journalist from Poland in the second part. Well, we will come closer to prognosis, and I will start with giving the floor on the situation, on the elections, to Mr. Stanislav. The floor is yours. And the microphone is yours. So please tell us about the general picture. My question is, what about the diaspora there? Because in Romania, the diaspora has determined a lot in terms of development. So what about Poland? Thank you. Hello, dear colleagues. Hello, dear viewers, listeners, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event, and thank you also to everyone for coming just to listen, to analyze what's happened in the neighboring country. And while I think that it's already a good tradition to come here together in Ukraine Crisis Media Center to discuss Polish elections. Last time, if I remember correctly, we came together after the parliamentary elections, and also we had a very fruitful, nice discussion because there were some things to consider, and also we saw really active elections. And now Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Valeriy has mentioned that we can finally breathe out because this electoral cycle comes to an end, this marathon that lasted for almost 2 years, even though, again, it depends on how do we look at that, because if the candidate from the powers will come to power, we can very carefully speak about that. When this electoral marathon comes to an end, then Poland might more or less also sign with relief, both the citizens and also just to be engaged in some things of their own than being all in the elections. If the candidate from oppositional, well, the candidate who is supported by opposition, there's risk that the electoral cycle not just won't come to an end, but also might start with a new power, because some events might happen that will be far from, let me say it, so being able to call the political situation in Poland stable. Well, of course, I don't want to agitate anyone to vote for somebody, and it's up to the citizens of Poland to decide who is going to be the next president of their country. And it was mentioned correctly that actually for Polish people, the main thing is the parliamentary elections, because it's parliamentary and presidential republic, because depending on the results of the elections to legislative parties, the coalition depends, formation of coalitions, and coalition is forming the government, and the government is impacting most, let me say so, the processes of external and internal nature in Poland. I think it is clear, but still the position of the president of Poland is not the last one in the country, and it has impact. In particular, the president of Poland is the commander-in-chief, and he has the right to call the Council of Defense and Security, and he has the right for the veto right for certain draft laws, and in order to go for the veto, they need to get the 3/5 of the voices in Sejm and the lower palate. And now it's quite problematic, taking into account that coalition, the so-called coalition of the 15th of October, it's not kind of the monolith, and it consists of many political powers. The governmental platform is the main one, and it is actually fighting for their candidate to be the head of the republic. But at the same time, they have also like younger partners, and each of these partners have their political ambitions. As of now, we can see that there are positive signals that the candidates who could not join the second tour, those that are now, let us say so, either the candidate Szymon Hołownia, who is Marshal of Sejm and the leader of the movement in Poland, he is supporting Rafał Trzaskowski. Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, the leader of the other party, he was the candidate. By the way, it was prognosed that he would maybe go to the elections as separate participant. He is also supporting now. So as of now, we cannot say that something's threatening the coalition, but we don't know what will happen in the second tour. We will talk more about the second tour, but in any case, it's important for us to see the whole picture. And indeed, the situation is quite specific, and as a matter of fact, we can say that the citizens of the Republic of Poland has shown the yellow card actually to the mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Trzaskowski, the candidate who went to the second tour, and it's the favorite one in this tour of elections, and also Donald Tusk, the same card. And it means that in Poland there are problems, and just like there are problems for the acting authorities who did not implement all the things that they promised, and we see that there is certain dissatisfaction among the citizens. So as a matter of fact, we can see that the elections of the president of Poland is there is a range of different moods in people, and the important moment when we are talking about some questionnaires that were or surveys that were conducted a week ago, approximately, right when this pre-election week was opening up, and it seems that nothing extraordinary should happen, and the prognosis were showing that Trzaskowski and Nawrocki will go to the second tour. However, the gap between them will be bigger than it is now, because now the gap between the candidates is minimal, like 2% according to the results published by the State Election Committee of Poland. And we can see that also there are other unexpected results, like the Grzegorz Braun, the fourth place. And we know that it's specific politician, speaking mindly, and he likes to conduct different type of performances in Poland, in the parliament, and he's probably well known in every Polish family. However, unexpectedly, he received the fourth place, and that means that together with Ramiro Manson and the representative of the party who got the third place, they are gaining more than 20% of voices, and that's serious threat for Rafał Trzaskowski, taking into account that he doesn't have much support. Even the leaders like Szymon Holowniczy and Magdalena Biat, still he is not getting enough. Again, we don't know. I will not now make the prognosis for the second tour, but there is chance that he won't win, and that means that Civil Platform won't be able to end the cycle that the goal that they had to get to full power in the country, to implement the promises that took place earlier and that are taking place right now. And again, we will see what happens. And for the right and justice now, it is important to win at these elections, because it will not just complicate Donald Tusk how to manage the country, but at the same time it will make it more complicated to conduct various criminal investigations against right and justice. And also you have to understand that it might be a trampoline to the next elections to the parliament that have to happen in 2027, or even the election that will happen earlier, because nobody excludes this possibility, and that will allow them to mobilize their electors around them. So we are following the events, and I think that the next 2 weeks will be very active. We will observe the statements of the candidates and other things that will take place. But of course, what I can say for sure is to how the Polish people are prognosing. It's impossible to prognose that. And also about the diaspora, it's an interesting aspect that traditionally Rafał Trzaskowski has won the second elections in a row, because the last time, 2020, it was just the same, and he had 36% of support, I guess, but then the second, Sławomir Mencen, was 16%. It's kind of a big gap with Trzaskowski, but still the second place, not Nawrocki, because Nawrocki is in the third place. But in any case, we see that there is tendency, there is support of such ultra-conservative, let us say, so powers that have the different vision than, for example, the Civil Platform. So it is also a very interesting story, and we will see what the second tour shows. But I think that here we need to, all the candidates, they need to just mobilize their electors and try to take the electoral support on them that was divided in between the other 11 candidates that did not make it to the second tour. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the broad and detailed picture, and for the fact that you didn't forget the diaspora. But I would like, Anatoly, to ask you, as an expert, Ukrainian-Polish PDF form. Mr. Stanislav gave the picture more about the candidates. I'm very interested to hear what topics were touched upon, like what was in the newspapers and the discussions that were raised. So what might be highlighted now as the key issues, in order to take, well, so to say, the electors on their side. But I don't understand how at the same time you can take the young electors and the senior ones, because you will have to take into account a lot of details, but that is technical thing. I'm not asking you about the technical things. I'm asking about the main topics. What are they going to build on now, and what are the topics of European safety? That's what we heard about Germany, because it was discussed during the elections that happened not that long ago, by the way, and Ukraine. How is all of that discussed, and how you prognose that will be discussed? Thank you. I'd say that, in my opinion, like following the debates and the electional rhetorics, we see that there are two traditional candidates, and we could see that, as a matter of fact, that still was the war of the past. I mean, well, let us say so. I won't say that Rafał Trzaskowski or Karol Nawrocki presented some new vision or some explosive claims of the place of Poland in architecture of safety of the European Union. So all of that lasted like this battle, so to say, in between them. It was around the old topics. It was around the old discussions, etc. I do understand that Rafał Trzaskowski, he was having a very careful campaign, in my opinion, and he was trying, well, maybe not to touch upon some very drastic topics, so to say. But maybe that is what was unhelpful for him, because he was in this situation where he was representing the power, and Nawrocki was in the situation where he was representing the opposition. And just like always on this criticism, it is always easier to get the better score. For me personally, there was lack of these important safety issues, because it seems to me that both Polish society as well, they expected more clear picture and vision of how the president, who is the head of the state, who is the commander-in-chief, how they are going to ensure formation of their army. How do they see in general, like the numbers more or less clear, but what kind of alliances do they see? Possible steps, maybe the new form of regional safety. That wasn't there, and mostly it was about the traditional, so to say, for Poland, well, not just for Poland topics, the migration issues, economic, social issues, and problems of their attitude to LGBT, abortions, etc., etc. Well, and also we could see again the traditional division into the pro-American, so to say, candidate and the kind of pro-European. So Nawrocki was more like pro-American, and well, kind of he was insisting on strong bilateral relations with the USA. And we could see the visit of Nawrocki to the USA and his meeting with the president, Donald Trump. At the time when Rafał Trzaskowski, he was more focused on France, Germany, and these connections. So that is why we saw such a situation that exists. If you allow me, just a few more observations. We can see that many people were prognosing that these elections will become the end, and maybe they will break the system of the two-party system of domination of the two main parties. So many people were saying that it will end before they have to go to the field, as I just mentioned in Poland. But we see that two candidates, 60%, like still they are having 60% of the electorate. And we saw that 20% quite easily Manson and Brown took. And we can say that it's 1/5 of electors. It's a very powerful thing in these moments regarding those elements
Xenophobia,
of xenophobia that is there. Far not everybody has that. I would like to underline that, but still, another moment, if we take, for example, and we make the electorate of the different candidates, such as Manson and Adrian Zamberg, and he is representing the left party, but like the anti-system party. So jointly, 55% of young electorate voted for them from 19 to 29 years old. So we are saying that it's a huge field for further parliamentary elections, and we have to watch that as well and draw some conclusions. Yeah, so I was also surprised. I expect a bit less, but it is clear that even though Novrotsky has lost, but he's lost mathematically. Yeah, now he is on the uplift of what was not shown in all the researches. So these are the issues of researchers, how this sociology is working in total. Thank you. Thank you. Well, actually, from the two speeches, we understand the general picture, and we touched upon the issue of the new parties and new faces. I'd like to ask the director of Institute of World Policy, Mr. Mahda, Johan Mahda, to make a bridge in our briefing. What did this new picture show to us? Is that moving more is that more brown, as it is mentioned in Poland? Maybe whether you agree, or these are some new moments, or they are totally not new for us. Maybe how to win the elections, more on populist positions than more rational. Even the elections in Romania could show us that, doctors of sciences can still win the elections. It is still possible. And what I started with, I know that in comments you mentioned, so we still have a hybrid war during elections, or everything stops. When there are negotiations in Istanbul, the war stops, and in negotiations in Poland, Russian attacks to European countries. Please. Thank you, Mr. Valeriy. I wanted to joke first that if in the third time we will come together to discuss Polish elections, we can just go and just apply for the card of the Polish citizen. But I would like to pay your attention to a different thing. We are partners. Our countries are strategic partners, but during in the latest years, we have political asynchronization. In Ukraine, due to obvious reasons, there are no elections. And in Poland, we could see the whole election cycle. And by the fact that we are observing, we are showing our interest to the things that are happening in Poland, and we are showing that the elections are also interesting for us. And we have to treat that seriously. By the way, if we are talking about hybridness, the topic that is on the surface, of course, is the issue of impact of ruling tragedy. And here we have to say about Pushniki. This settlement has no attitude to do to ruling tragedy, but the very fact that exhumation was conducted, it was coming from provocation on the mountain of Monastir. So it was the first case when we can recall that Polish and Ukrainian society, well, of course, not without the segments, reaction of which will be always prognosed, but still, there are such facts. Back on the 6th of May, the Minister of Digitalization of Poland said that there were attempts of intrusion to Polish elections, and yesterday this information about the doppelganger information, well, it was in Ukrainian sources, Polish sources, and I think that we have to understand that Poland, for the Kremlin, is not just one of the main enemies but also the main place of their hybrid efforts. Here we have to stress on the fact that as of today, Poland is one of the main transition points and the paths, how the weapons are supplied to Ukraine, not just weapons, that is. So accordingly, the situation of elections in Poland and Romania, it was imposing a serious threat to communications for Ukraine as the party that is taking part in war. And it is extremely interesting for us because the elections give some interesting results. I will say that the fact that Maciej Macek, the candidate who appeared, who got less, but his task, in my opinion, was just to appear in the list of the candidates. I call these elections like, elections for those who are not superstitious, 13 candidates. But he just went there in order to mark the fact that today, about what today is happening in Polish authorities. Yeah, and just to say that I want to ask you, if possible, while you're listening to yourself in parallel, I'm trying to establish the contact with our colleagues. Yeah, I just want to ask the following thing. He appeared, but it's not possible to appear just at the elections. It's 100,000 signatures. So it means that somebody were giving these 100,000 signatures. Isn't it the test for the next period that in this way they can introduce different candidates in the campaign, even those that were unknown before, the financial resource? By the way, in Poland, if I read it correctly, still they cannot figure out where did he take these 100,000 signatures. Yeah, I think that this is the issue that deserves the attention of Polish special services. First of all, because it's the moment. Yeah, indeed, 100,000 signatures in the country where they have approximately 30 million of electorate. Well, it's not that much. However, it's a significant number, and I think that it's demonstration of the fact how actually Russian special services can impact the situation. Altogether with that, we have to recall the so-called active measures that, as of today, are observed were observed in Poland. And, for example, the visit of Donald Tusk a week before the first tour of president elections and his active participation in the coalition was also related to the future presidential elections. But I think that also the decision on closing the Russian consulship in Poland a few days before the elections, it was also, in a sense, very important. So Poland went through these elections as a society which is divided. Each fifth person voted for populists, each 10th, as Anatoly mentioned, for the left, non-systemic left powers. So this turbulence is observed, and the gap between the candidates will make them, do quite rapid movements, I think. And we will all observe that in these 2 weeks. Thank you. We will have the opportunity after this to discuss the issues, and Mr. Yevhen also, not just for your speech, but also that you helped to Unite Poland and Warsaw to us. Paweł Bobolowicz, Svetlana Malik, they are in Poland, and I think that they felt this pulse of elections more than we did, how that was happening. So I think you heard the beginning of the discussion. I would like in your information for Ukrainian and international audience, take the moment, whether it was felt in Poland, the importance, the historical nature of these elections, and how much should we be worried about the results and the moods, like where the Poland is going? And I will come back to the topic that we've discussed already. What topics are now most interesting for Polish people? How they are making their choice based on what? I would like to start with Mr. Bobolowicz, so he can start telling us about that. And Svetlana Malik, she has told us a lot about Poland, to Ukrainian radio, but it's not the conclusion, but like your general opinion. Mr. Bobolowicz, please. Hello. I was observing the first and second elections from Ukrainian Uzhhorod, where I live every day. So the perspective of what I see also in the information, I'm the participant of Polish Life. It's a very interesting topic, how important the elections in Poland are, because earlier we were talking about the systemic difference, because the president of Poland, as you mentioned, he is not as strong institution as like in Ukrainian constitution. So here there's huge systemic difference in actually the president of Poland, and we've seen that in the last years when he is related to very strong power, like during the times of peace, and he is part of that environment. So as a matter of fact, he can be the person who can, actually, he can even not be present in public space. He can be just the executor of what is happening in political committees and in the government and parliament. However, when we look at the end of the cadence of Andrzej Duda, when the other political team came into the parliament and came to power, the position of the president, even though he doesn't have many opportunities, it's very important because he has the opportunity to block certain initiatives of the parliament and the government. And also, for example, they can have certain negotiations or certain dialogues about the foreign policy, for example, or when we are talking about safety issues. We've seen that, and it doesn't always work for the benefit of our state, of our country. Now, the fact that the president doesn't have the big legal and systemic opportunities does not reduce the importance of the elections. And we can see that more than 67% of electors who went to vote. And it means that Polish people are interested in these elections and they are important for them. And we could also see that on the political discussions that were there in the elective campaign. And it is also related to your second question, right? What was the basics of the political negotiations, what were the topics and political campaigns. And most interesting thing is when we consider these campaigns, we understand that even though the main discussions are between the liberal and conservative teams, but we can go really deep into these notions, what is liberalism and etc. in modern politicians of Poland, for modern politicians of Poland. But we will try to formulate that more or less so we can see that the topic was not really in line with the conservatism and everything, because there is no even high vision of the future. So it's not about the big vision of the future, because of course there will be some issues related to how the Polish participation in the European Union should look like, or also the ecological policy of the European Union and all the topics that emerged related to the society, what is observed in the society, and some things regarding the rights of women or understanding who's a man or who's a woman. These things, they emerged, but mainly they appeared in criticism of competitors and how we imagine the future of Poland in the EU and Poland in safety structure and Poland in relation to the neighbors, but it was more the criticism of their opponent, the criticism regarding how now they are working and how they used to use their powers, etc., and looking for a compromise for the political opponents. In the last days, mostly, we saw that clearly. Is in between the two main candidates, many things actually were not mentioned till the end, that even the candidates think about that. So it was not spoken till the end, but people were adding, like something was not said, but people added that from how they behave. And that is about Metzen, who was trying to show that he is again, like he is the main candidate and he is using the different paths to implement, like to life in Poland, that he is not the candidate who was trying like to get the system. And Brown was doing the same. He was trying to prove that in Poland for many years there are like two polar system, and he's from the different side. So he's coming as someone new. So it was not that important what he will say. Because it's important of our future, but it was important to show that he is not the system that exists in Poland for like 30 years. Well, of course, the topic of anti-immigration also was raised for the candidates who were based on nationalistic policy, and that actually was like almost all the candidates had that, even though he went to the second tour of elections. So it might be a big surprise that even a liberal candidate, in a certain moment, his campaign had anti-Ukrainian, maybe not anti-Ukrainian because it's not mentioned well, but Ukrainian topic. Yeah, and conservative some addition. So he was the initiator to delay the payments of social aid for Ukrainian migrants in Poland. And that was very unclear, like how can that be told by a liberal candidate? Well, of course, earlier the conservative candidates, they were saying such things quite often, and based on that, they were forming part of their campaign. Mainly, unfortunately, again, we have to come back to the topic, the candidates who are really radical, and together with Grzegorz Braun, but they had many voices. However, they were present, so we can say like 1 or less than 1% of voices. Well, of course, then people are not satisfied with this candidate because he has really little support. And what you mentioned is very important, that the support, right? How did he get 1,000 of signatures in order to participate in general in the election? So anti-migration policy and nationalistic also requires a strong presence in the elective campaign, and he had almost 15% of voices. What is important here when we look at the main result in this conservative candidates and liberal candidates, I would like to mention that it is not really in line with the ideological basics of these candidates. But when we look at that, and that is very important in order to have the prognosis of what can happen in the second tour of elections, we will see that this conservative candidate and Karol Nawrocki can now count on that. It is more than 50% in general of all the voices. And Rafał Trzaskowski can look at a bit more than 41% of voices. And that's very interesting because it means that the political formation that is now with power, the Social Platform and the political partner, they, based on these first tours, then they didn't lose the legitimacy of representing the interests of most citizens of Poland. And the next issue, and I won't be the optimist that there won't be next elections in Poland soon, because the question is, do they have the mandate to represent the interest of a majority of Polish people? Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify one moment because now you raised this topic. We will discuss that next. So it means that it might impact the sustainability of coalition. Coalition might be changed, and then you think that there is direct path to next elections, that the reformatting cannot happen. Yes, because there are many different factors in a coalition, but we see a really weak result of the Speaker of Polish Parliament. And like the 5%, it means that he has no support at all, and it's one of the very important people in coalition. So, like, our agrarians, we don't see these voices. And there is a question in the coalition, who still remains in this coalition, and how do they prognose what's going to be next? They can't say, like, that's it. Like, we need to leave the coalition, and I'm sure that part of them will say that. And we were looking at the headlines of internet media, and we will see in 2 weeks where the coalition exists, and it is very important whether Rafał Trzaskowski will win, what is the result that he gets, or maybe the Karol Nawrocki will win, or the competitor's victory will mean some union in coalition, or maybe just parts of this coalition mostly will just be in Poland because there is cooperation with the conservative party, and they will say, like, that's it, we understand that there are no prospects and we need to change this parliamentary, like what is in the parliament, and we can think about the new government. It is very interesting and very important. Yeah, at the end, I would like to ask a very brief question to you. As far as I understand, you voted, right? Where were you? In Uzhhorod and Kyiv? As far as I understand, we had no voting. Where did you vote? Well, I will be honest that the first time in all my life, I'm voting since 1990 or 1991 in free. Like, the election process is very important, but it's the first time when I did not participate in the elections because, unfortunately, Poland did not ensure the voting for people who are in Ukraine, like Polish citizens who are in Ukraine. It's not serious because you could have elected different places where you can safely organize the process. So I just simply don't understand why it is happening in such a way. It's not just about me, but also about some, well, maybe these are not thousands of people, but citizens have the right to participate in elections and foreign units. In the second tour, I'm going to vote in my city in Lublin, and I will be there at the time. It would be good for the state not to forget about their citizens in this situation as well. And if we are so scared that we are afraid to make elections in Ukraine, then we also have to mention that in our society, right? That the situation is so difficult. So maybe then even some candidates wouldn't have told different nonsense about Ukraine. Thank you. And as a person who's been working with the embassy as an ambassador, well, of course it is not solved on the place, but there are general safety rules that indeed in the conditions of war, Ukraine is in war. So I'm not confident that even Ukraine would allow to risk the lives of their people. So it's a complicated safety issue. However, I didn't ask this question because of that, because it's like now you're a hidden resource, electoral resource for the next voting. Yeah, it's also good, as we can see, but actually this hidden resource, as you are calling those people who didn't go to the first tour of elections, it is not big. Well, maybe somebody will think how to engage them, but we know that the second tour of elections in Poland, so the number of people was usually increased. And I think that actually it might be bigger because when we have such very strong, like, different things, like the polar situations, it might cause the necessity, like, yeah, I will go, etc. To be honest, I was also approaching it in such way, like, yeah, it is hard for me now to leave, but in the second tour, I will be present. Yeah, so such situation might happen, and we also have to understand that, for example, when looking at the electorate of Slavomir Meltsen and understanding that this electorate will be the one that would like to, and Zhelykhovskyi, right, this conservative electorate, there is a lot of people, and they might have different economic reasons, and they might be looking for some communities with Zhelykhovskyi, but in Manson, I also can say that not till the end, he will say, like, well, there is no one to vote for, etc. Like Krzysztof Bosak, his vice speaker of Sejm in Confederation. So as a matter of fact, it might happen that part of the electorate who went to the first tour, they won't see their candidates in the second tour. So there's a serious problem. For people who consider that they were voting like anti-system, so they are representing this bipolar. If you didn't vote for them in the first tour, so why should you vote in the second? And I think that radical aggravation of the campaign will happen in Poland in order to prove how important it is for voting and how like different big things are there. So of course the candidates that didn't pass in the first tour, they will be used and they will be forced to support some candidates. I'm interested, like, who wants to have support from Grzegorz Braun and won't be ashamed of such a support. So they will even take the voices from Grzegorz Braun. Maybe many people are just shocked that he received more than 6% of his voices with such rhetoric, like really nationalistic and anti-European and like anti-Semitist. So more than 1 million voices. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And you maybe raise some very important topics for our assessment, for our prognosis as well. But before I will ask the participants to say, don't think that we forget. Svetlana Mialik, she was calling me so many times for me to say about the elections in Poland. I'm not such a good specialist as Svetlana. So now, Svetlana, I would like to ask you, we changed the roles. So not as a correspondent of Ukrainian radio, but as a person, and Polish radio, but as a person who is in there. I am coming back to this issue all the time. The Ukrainian topic, the topic of Ukrainian and Russian war, is that all so far from discussions, even at the election, so it was not discussed so actively in Poland, or it is good? What did you hear being there as Ukrainian? I'm interested in the opinion. Ukrainian topic, it doesn't mean only about Ukraine. I mean war, I mean European safety in general, and maybe some joint actions of Poland and Ukraine. So these topics. Well, in addition to the things that you want to tell us. Hello, dear colleagues, answering your questions regarding the topics that are being discussed, in particular Ukrainian topic, because I'm cooperating with the Polish radio for Ukraine, and we made before the elections a special project which was called Elections in Poland-Ukrainian Context. And actually in this project we were trying to analyze the topic of Ukraine, how important it is for the candidates and for the elections and in general. And I will tell you the conclusions that actually this campaign for Poland, it is thematic. In a sense, I will agree with the previous speaker. There was no central topic, like international or economic topic. That is, we were talking about some internal issues, the issues of Poland, as in a bulk, issues of abortions, LGBT, etc. And Ukrainian context was also mentioned, and it was usually mentioned regarding the war of Russia against Ukraine, however, taking into account Polish safety. For Poland, it is very important so that Russian troops, Russian soldiers, not to come to the border with Poland. So Ukrainian safety is important for Poland in terms of their safety. As for Ukrainian factor, that is the issue of refugees, and it's not really good for Ukraine because, as a matter of fact, the key candidates, if we are talking about Valeriy Zhelykhovskyi, it was mentioned, he also took this topic that Ukrainian refugees in Poland who are not working, and mostly we know these are women with children, and part of them maybe are not working because 85, almost 90% of refugees in Poland, they are working legally, they are paying taxes to Polish budget, they are raising Polish economy. So for refugees with children who are not working, they couldn't get 100 plus. This is a program. I mean, the child every month can get 800 zloty. It's like 10,000 hryvnias, so it's a very significant support for families of military migrants, those who are with children, and women cannot work. So I was at a press conference of Valeriy Zhelykhovskyi before the elections, and I was having this exclusive Blitz interview. I was asking him about that. Why so? He was not giving a clear answer. He just said that the women who have many children, who have children with disability, and they cannot work, so actually they can count on some different type of support, like more individual, I would say. But this topic at 100 plus for Ukrainian refugees and the fact that politicians want to take away this only aid because out of the cash aid for refugees is the only one that exists in Poland. In a sense, it is discriminational because other migrants and refugees from other countries, they can hope for like that without any other conditions, whether mothers are working or not, children are getting these 100 plus. So this topic was raised, and another topic that could have emerged, and we were waiting for that. It's a historical topic, taking into account the agreements between the governments of the two countries, between the Ministry of Culture of Ukraine and Poland, that search works have started, as you mentioned, in Puzhniki. This topic was taking off the electoral campaign, and certain candidates could not use this because there is nothing to speak about, because the topic of historical conflict is being resolved step by step. And it was very correct decision of Ukraine to here just agree with Poland and to start the search works and exhumation at Puzhniki. What is happening right now in Poland, I would say that now the experts and journalists and everybody is actively discussing the official results of the first tour, and the results were announced by the committee in Poland quite quickly, today at 11 Warsaw time, and well, they are not really different with exit polls. So the results were prognosed that the leaders will be the two candidates, mayor of Warsaw and the independent candidate from like Karol Nawrocki, who is supported by Right and Justice. The only thing that was, well, interesting, let us say so, and unexpected is that they will have such a little difference in between them. And I think that certain people are disappointed because they were hoping that they will have 4 or 5% difference with Nawrocki. But also, they expect that the third place will have the Sławomir Mencen, the third place, and all the social surveys were proving that. But social surveys were giving him like 11 to 13%. He took more. He took 15 at the elections, and he has mentioned that it's the biggest success, and it's the record support. And he was conducting the campaign starting from September. It was just a few million zlotys, this campaign, but his people were actively using internet and TikTok. And step by step, they were taking voices from Shirley Holonia, etc., and the party became very popular among youth. And taking into account that the Confederation is on the political Olymp of Poland, like the third power, so Mencen is talking about the parliament elections. He is talking about the big future of the Confederation. party. And for Ukraine, I think it's not just a call, but it's anti-Ukrainian party, and they are against the payments to refugees. They are against Ukraine and NATO and EU. They are very skeptical in terms of Russian war against Ukraine. And we know the claims that Manson was making and his statements. So we need to think beforehand, and we need to plan our strategy. Another unexpected thing during these elections, just as you colleagues mentioned, and I think that this is unexpected for Poland as well, because everybody is discussing that widely, that fourth seat is Grzegorz Braun, the candidate with the extreme right and pro-Russian views. He got more than 6%, and that is more than 1 million of voices, and this is very significant, even though according to the social surveys he had to be the sixth after Szymon Hołownia and after the candidates from New Lewica, Zamper and Bit. And the surveys gave him 4%, and everybody knows that Braun is well known by his pro-Russian statements, and he used to be the member of Confederation, but he left the party after the party has officially supported the other candidate, Manson, and now he's the head of the Confederation of Polish Crown. And till March this month, they were included in the Confederation of Freedom and Independence. This is what the full name of the party is. And all his scandalous claims and all his scandalous actions, like the candles and same, and taking off the Ukrainian flag, and that he was burning the flag of the European Union, and that he is saying all the time that we need to stop banderization in Poland, and very bad feedback about refugees, that they brought some illnesses to Poland. It's impossible to hear, to listen to. And I think that Polish society nowadays starts to think why Braun has such results. And step by step in Poland, in Polish society, xenophobia is kind of blooming, anti-Semitism, because if we count that Manson and Braun together, they get 21%, and it's quite significant. If you ask why Polish society voted for Braun, then in my opinion, well, part of people just share his opinion, and Braun is very emotional. He is radical. People like that. People like the fact that what I heard from the people I know, that he was mentioning is his point of view. He is not changing his position, even though nowadays in the network there's video 10 years ago where Braun is without his beard and he's talking about cooperation with Ukraine. That is totally different Braun. I think that this is the case when the person, the politician, and his place is determining his position and his views. Another candidate, the pro-Russian, again, he was mentioned here. He is openly supporting Putin, but he's got 0.16 or something like that, so he's among the last ones, and that's a benefit for us. But I think that the task of the candidate was not to gain the voices, but just to test the Polish society in terms of perception of Russia and the Kremlin points of view and Kremlin leaders, etc., etc. I was surprised, for example, that the candidates from New Lewica, Zamper and Magdalena Bit, who are supporting Ukraine, they received just little number of voices, 5% and 4%. And Szymon Hołownia, who has very sustainable position regarding Ukraine, he is not really well supported. So he has 4.99. So what's going to happen with this political project of his? The time will show. But Szymon Hołownia quite calmly perceived his result, and he already encouraged the electors to vote for Rafał Trzaskowski. What's next? 2 weeks of active electoral campaign. The candidates have already started preparing themselves for the second tour actively, and Rafał Trzaskowski has went into the pre-election cycle, and it is very important for him now to collect the electorate and also, I think, to focus on the vision of the future of Poland, because all these internal issues, they exist. However, what is the future of Poland? What is the role of Poland, and what is the place of Poland in the European Union and geopolitical situation. And as for the war of Russia against Ukraine, we don't quite understand that, not quite well. And I think that it is very important here that he maybe is more loyal to Ukrainian military migrants in Poland, because Ukrainian women with children, that is the most vulnerable category of citizens here in Poland. As for Valeriy Nawrocki, so people who are going to vote for him, they are hoping for the voices of confederation. And Manson himself, he mentioned that his electors, they are free to make their decision. However, in the nearest time, he will advise people who to vote for. And it also depends on how many people will come, because here it was a record 67%. In 1995, I think it was 64, 65. And here, even like the weather is rainy and the cold, and well, nothing stopped people from coming. So you see that Polish people are very active in their political views and in support. But that was in the first tour. We'll see what will happen in the second tour. But many people are saying that they want, like the people from Poland, I know, they don't want to have the monopolization of power in Poland, and some are saying that they want this fight to end, this political fight that is happening all the time, and for Poland to start living normal life. Yeah, no matter, like, not to have these political fights, but just to focus, people can focus their powers on the prospects and strengthening Poland. Premier Tusk is saying that if Zhelykhovskyi will win, then his team will be strengthened, like he and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Sikorsky and Zhelykhovskyi. It will be one of the strongest teams, and they will be able to take Poland to a really high level. So we are very interested in how the events will happen and maybe what will be the black PR, because I think that everybody has heard that, because it's a like virus topic in Poland regarding the Valeriy Nawrocki. We are talking about the apartment in Gdansk, and he started being like caregiver of the person who has. Yeah, we will not repeat that because we will have to give you the floor about each of the candidates then to speak. So thank you very much, Mrs. Lana. Just finalize your thought. Yeah, so maybe some information about Mr. Zhelykhovskyi. So we are waiting for the second tour and hoping for good results, especially for Ukraine. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. So the citizen of Ukraine, I think we should not, assess different moments. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, because such picture from Warsaw and from Uzhhorod to Warsaw and then Kyiv, yeah, we see really exhaustive picture of the elections. And actually, there were a few questions, very interesting. I would like now the panelists, or maybe Stanislav, or Mr. Yevhen, or like 3 minutes for each of you. Just say the things, comment on the things that you heard. First of all, like, of course, the prognosis, right? Related to the configuration of power in general. Whether you assume that there will be change in the coalition and other elections, and well, either separately or each one of us. Mr. Yevhen said a very important topic, that for us, for Ukrainians, lack of such mechanism. It's kind of a simulation of our internal elections, and I'm interested in the opinion of everyone. The Polish model of the elections, can it be, maybe Ukrainian can be the projection of the Polish, or we will have a totally different story? Why? Because the processes, political, are very similar. And the form of state management is just the same. Mr. Pavlo said that your president is different in terms of constitution. Well, if you allow me, I would like to say that according to our constitution, it's the same. Yeah, it's the matter of the fact we have different, because we have martial law and we have war, and that is why, like, the president also came not from the system, and he is controlling the parliament. But now our president's office is controlling everything. Yeah, so according to the constitution, it shouldn't happen this way, actually. Yeah, but also stronger position, even though, as a matter of fact, really, it is coming from something else. Yeah, you're right. Yes, I saw and I communicated in person with the presidents of Poland on different stages, and maybe the fact that we don't see, well, maybe you don't see that in Ukraine and Poland, but in UN, meetings abroad, everything is perceived differently. The president of Poland, just like other countries abroad, it's the face of the state in general, and it's totally different attitude. Just like here in Ukraine, we are treating differently the president, sometimes in terms of internal issues, and we are looking at the position of Ukraine abroad. So I think the same story is there in Poland, and I think that no matter who will be elected by the Polish people, it will be the new stage, and some external policy will unite them, but it will be the choice of Poland. And here it's what I mentioned, First of all, I see, like, literally the two words. I see that you didn't manage to somehow change the situation in conduct elections in an organized way. But I haven't heard anything about the big, like, violations. By the way, it means that it was done really well. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, we don't even have the mechanisms like that, even close. And yeah, we cannot conduct the elections even if we would like to, neither like the OECD observers. Well, I would say that indeed we cannot just open the elections here to our fear and to our risk, because it is Ukraine who should be responsible for the safety, right? It's the country where the buildings are located, and we cannot even ensure the safety of our own elections. So we have to understand these issues, and your experience is very important for us, and the experience of Romania in terms of diaspora. And, well, yeah, from the words of especially Ms. Svetlana, I hear that there are some questions that can be asked to Polish politicians, because I think that citizens of Poland of Ukrainian origin will gain bigger role also during the elections. And all these issues, yep, please. I just want to touch upon the topic of 800 plus and the future of Ukrainian citizens. The issue is that the number of Polish citizens of Ukrainian origin, those who are there, like the work migrants and war migrants, it is relatively not high. So the candidates didn't even touch upon the topic. Yeah, approximately what we are talking about. How many Ukrainians are now citizens of Poland? Dozen of thousands. In the format, well, not more than 100,000 for sure. And maybe Poland knows better. We need to understand that these are two different things. People who came as migrants after the full-scale invasion, and they did not get the citizenship. They have no rights to participate in elections. We are talking about different types of people who have Ukrainian origin. It is less those who have Ukrainian origin from the pre-war times. These are totally different issues, and of course they have no impact on the realities. So the issue like Ukraine and the rights of migrants, etc., it was not, and it will not be directed at the electors from Ukraine, because we almost have no such people, and we only have those. And yet, how Polish people are perceiving that? Well, of course, if Ukrainians will remain in Poland and they will go through the very complicated process of getting a citizenship, very complicated process, we can say that it might be of some importance and the dream of different politicians. But now, in reality, it doesn't play a role. And Like there are no big groups of Ukrainians who are voting, not big numbers. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just Mr. Valeriy was encouraging us to talk about the prospects. And I would say that 15% of mention they can speed up the naturalization of Ukrainians because we will be honest. There are approximately 2 million Ukrainian citizens who are nowadays in Poland. It's potential electoral resource for the future of parliamentary elections, for the future of president elections, for those who are going to consider that right now, because Ukraine doesn't have the program how to return their citizens. And that's a very significant moment. That is a moment we have to bring to people's attention so that people cannot be the ones who are hanging in the air. Well, maybe not in the material condition, but lack of financial support in addition to program 800 plus is making most Ukrainian migrants there in Poland work. But political status, I think that it will also exist, and the need of being citizens. Well, again, it's not a secret anymore because Mr. Andrusechko wrote about that. So Piotr Andrusechko has gone 650 kilometers in order to vote at the elections of the Polish president. And I think that it is the example in order to give Ukrainian citizens in Poland, well, just to open the discussion, with this number of layers of Ukrainian diaspora, like post-war and the first one and the present one, I mean post-war after the Second World War, etc. Yeah, it's a separate big topic. I don't think that we will be able to discuss that right now, and I have my own opinion regarding that, and I think, yeah, that's just my opinion, but I think that 3 years, it's enough not to pretend for some social payments, but to work. And that's a different aspect. The only thing is what we have in between the countries, it's not even about the refugees from war, but Ukraine and Poland have signed a range of documents in order to ensure, in calm period without war, to ensure the rights for Polish people in Ukraine and Ukrainians in Poland. That is, we have to expand the spaces in order to have the mutual standards that are in line with each other. So Ukraine is helping Polish people here, and Polish people help Ukrainians there. It's about the people who are retired, about like families with many children, etc. So there are certain results. And I think that if we will consider that seriously, we will find a lot of solutions even without the payments. I don't want Ukrainians to be beggars, to beg for money. Ukrainians are now building the European Poland, as a matter of fact, and many things, because it is in Poland that many Ukrainians are working. And how many billions of money is invested into Polish economy in 3 years? So here we are just saying thank you to Poland. Yeah, I don't hear these words like you came here, etc. It turned out to be a mutually beneficial situation, but the policy that was mentioned from time to time, I'm thinking like it can be solved with the historical problems, right? We can also solve it here, and I would like to add on this, how the impact of politicians and the government is important for, let us say so, just to calm down some negotiations, international negotiations. Yeah, we can have significant impact here. Mr. Stanislav, your conclusion, 3 minutes, please. Yeah, your conclusion. Yep, Ms. Svetlana, you were speaking a lot. You raised a lot of topics, and we will give you the floor at the end. Ms. Svetlana, I'm sorry. Now we will. Yeah, okay, just say what you haven't said. Yeah, as for Ukrainian families who became like refugees, they are getting 100 plus, so it is better for them not to get that. But this support is provided to all the citizens of Poland and to everybody who came, all the migrants who have children. Children are getting this aid, and Ukrainians are not excluded from that. So I think that the Polish politicians are speculating on the topic. It is not the correct thing. But to take this opportunity from Ukrainians, yeah, we shouldn't do that because it is given to everybody, no exclusion, citizens of Poland and non-citizens of Poland. Okay, thank you. I don't mind that from happening, but I'm just saying that it can be taken to the range of agreements, not just this complicated issue. Still, we are talking about the president's elections. And the topic is really broad. By the way, not enough attention is paid. It should be done more. Thanks for the participants because they are focusing on Poland. Please, Mr. Stanislav. Yeah, indeed. It's a very important stage for this country. We were mentioning that, and I agree with you because I was mentioning that as well, that we are observing the polarization of society in Poland, and it is clear because this difference right for justice and that still platform, they still continue. And I think that Poland will stay in this paradigm for a certain time. As for other political powers, I think that there is risk that Poland can, at least a part of the population which is more conservative, they can become radical because we understand that the Confederation of Freedom and Independence, they are pretending to have the leadership in Poland, and they would like to continue with this party, and somehow they are similar in many aspects. And now we will see actually what is the direction that a Polish policy will move in, because we can say that, yeah, the fate of the whole country might be at stake, the political issues, what is the vector for development, and what are the consequences for all of us. Because Poland, for us, is a very important lobbyist of our interests, and Poland is a very powerful country of the region, the country that included the Lublin Triangle, initiative of the Three Seas, etc. And now they are also in the Council of the European Union. So it's a very important country that can be, well, not the advocate maybe, but the lobbyist of our interests in the Western world. And yeah, of course, we wouldn't like such processes to happen that will make the Polish government and Polish society more radical, because everybody will suffer from that, because the enemy doesn't sleep, And we know that Russian Federation is observing the situation. It's about Poland and Romania and also the other neighboring countries such as Moldova, and Slovakia and Hungary, etc. So this is the forepost of Western world. And if you divide that, then Russian Federation will achieve their aim, their goal. They will be able to open their path to Europe. And we remember how that all ends. We don't need, hundreds of years of Russian shoes. We don't need dozens of years of dictatorship. We've survived these times already. Unfortunately, such politicians as Brown and Manson, they, well, let us say so, they are a very beneficial tool, consciously or unconsciously, in hands of Russian dictator and Russian state and this Moscow Federation that is dreaming of having a new division in the world. So I think that the healthy political powers need to work with their electorate, give the truthful information, and make everything possible not to have any negative scenarios, because it might be too late. We can see that from some of our neighbors like Slovakia and Hungary, especially Hungary, because it is a late stage, we can say that. And maybe the future elections in Hungary will change situation slightly, but now it's too early to say. As for the Poland, not everything is lost, because there's a lot of chances that Poland will continue existing both as an independent pro-Western country and democratic country, and they will build good relationship with Ukraine, because our nationalities are probably one of the most who suffered from the hundreds of years of occupation and, well, the activity that was conducted by Russian state in different historical epochs. And I don't think that we should speculate on the doubtful pages of history. We should give it to scientists, to narrow specialists, and our people need to build mutual cooperation, because we We are the gates of European civilization, you know. Thank you very much for such an ending, and we will give the floor again because it's the picture of bilateral relations, but still we are talking about elections. Yeah, as for the prognosis, it is really hard to have some prognosis, and I don't think that somebody will make the prognosis. They were really unexpected, and the results of the first tour were unexpected. And some people are saying that, well, maybe Rafał Trzaskowski will win with the 2% advantage, but it is still unknown. From the other side, Rafał Trzaskowski can also partially count on the Miramansen and the part that is an economic field for liberalization. During the last elections, I would like to remind that the voices of Bosak and also representative of Confederation, they divided 50-50. 51% went for Duda and 49% for Trzaskowski. So now like 10, 12, 15%, I don't know how many still can he get. As for the projection of Polish model to Ukraine, by the way, regarding the lists, because it's a very interesting situation as well, because many Polish experts are raising the topic, indeed, like where did he get these 100,000 of signatures even if such a number of people didn't vote for him. It's about the database of electors and how protected those are, and the verification of signatures, because in Ukraine it is the same, right? Because the signatures were written and the signature of the person was there, but actually nobody has conducted verification of signatures. So now in Poland it's about like maybe via such system as some systems to verify whether those people are giving their signature so that certain candidate can come to elections. As for the other segment of Polish model to Ukrainian, we saw a big role of non-systemic electorate. And here, a very interesting thing, if we are talking about our Ukrainian diaspora, and not just in Poland, but abroad in general. Because Romania, for example, like most are for like pro-Russian candidate, those Romanians who were living abroad, like 9 million, those who are in Romania, and 6 million, I guess, are the electors who are not living in Romania. So if we are talking about the further fate of Ukrainian diaspora, it is divided into those who came before the invasion, after the invasion, and if we are talking via the prism of that in Ukraine nowadays we are considering the idea of having like multiple double citizenship. In the future we can also have such a situation that our Ukrainians who will have the citizenship of Ukraine but they will live abroad, they also might vote in the future for non-systemic candidates. And first of all, it is really hard to investigate, hard to control, and hard to impact them. And the last thing, it's about the powers of the president. Well, in Ukraine, we have one difference, that in Ukraine, still the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, it's a president's quote. And in Poland, it's a quote of the Prime Minister. Thank you. Yeah, we have more differences, however. Nevertheless, the general assessment we had. So, dear colleagues from Warsaw, or maybe our colleagues who are, to the west from Kyiv. Okay, I gave you more time, consciously, significantly more time. If you want to briefly speak about your prognosis or something that was not mentioned yet, then please, Mr. Pavlo. Yeah, I would like to say that Uzhhorod is more to the west than my Lublin beloved, so you have to understand the nuances, geographical nuances when we are talking about west and east. Yeah, we won't phrase the historical topics, No, it's not historical. I'm talking about Ukrainian state, which is in the west, and it is a very good and geographical understanding. I would like to say about certain factors that voting of Ukrainians in Poland. I think that it is very important that we have to think how Ukrainians in Poland will participate in elections, not in Poland but in Ukraine. It's very important, and also it is needed to consider that a big part of people who left from Ukraine, these are people who maybe don't have a Ukrainian position, and it's a big challenge for the country, and you have to consider that as well. And to be honest, I will even think that I I would be a bit scared with the elections in Poland because there is an impact and serious impact of Russia, and also we can see all those provocations, Russian provocation on the territory of Poland, and unfortunately, very often they are using Ukrainian citizens, and that's a very serious problem. That is also about this topic of elections. And as for the things mentioned by Mr. Kurnosov, I would say that we are discussing like the next 2 weeks will be very hard and not easy, and it is very hard now to say what the result will be. And again, we can say that the main topic of the campaign, it will not be about the Ukraine. Maybe just God save us from the aggravation of war. Unfortunately, we cannot also exclude the strong impact. Well, I'm talking not just about the operation that yesterday we were talking about from Ukrainian sources, but also like Russian. Unfortunately, again, the political ideas and political thoughts, there might be very dangerous destabilization of the Polish state remains one of the possible options, not really strong ones. However, that exists, and we cannot just omit that with our attention, but we can just do everything in order not to come to that and not to hope that we will not come to that scenario. I think that nobody would like to have that. One more word. It is very important for me that this Mr. Maciak, who received 6,000 voices, I would say that it's 6,000 voices. It's too much. It doesn't matter whether it's a mistake or not, but I'm afraid the big part and a few thousands of people, they made that consciously. They knew what they were doing, and they were doing that with a pro-Russian position. And it's dangerous because in 1944, they didn't need 1,000 of Polish citizens because they just could manage Poland with few people. So it's a big danger. And part of other voices like Mazen or Brown, it's a real threat, and we have to think together because it's a threat that it exists also for Ukraine. What do we do with people who are pro-Russian in our society? Thank you very much, Mrs. Lana. I would like to say that we have to draw some conclusions already from what is happening with the Polish society, and the conclusions are that in Poland they have anti-Ukrainian position that is strengthening, and their society has become more radical. Anti-Semitism and xenophobia are becoming bigger than we thought, and this 21% from Manson and Brown, these are the confirmation of that, and this polarization of the society, the two camps, and this civil platform of peace, well, they didn't disappear. We will see who will win, and the debates are waiting. I don't know whether 1 or 2 tours of debates will be there. And Mr. Karol Nawrocki is saying that these debates have to be conducted not just by the state media, but also oppositional media, including Republic. And so we are waiting for the choice of Polish people, and we are making conclusions. We are planning our strategy. So, yeah. That's how it is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We heard you about that. And actually, it's not the task of Polish people. It's the task of Ukrainian structures to stand for the rights of Ukrainians abroad. And if there is such need, then there should be state policy. And we have the whole ministry created nowadays, of unity. So hopefully the goals of the ministry will be aiming further to opening some election sites abroad. Yeah, and they will work according to the concept. Mr. Johan, so you will summarize everything. Everything is very simple. We should have mutual vision, brief as a shot, because we are living in the conditions of war, and it has to rely on our joint history and be aiming at the future So the motto of our Polish-Ukrainian relationship is for our and for your future. It's simple and obvious. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice summary. And I will just respond. I will just add some optimism, Mr. Pavlo. I am dreaming of you to vote from Ukraine, from Kyiv, and Polish elections, and for us to have elections as well. And for that, we need to stop this war, to have victory, or to stop Russia. And I am very happy that the topics that are dividing in these elections in Poland, in my opinion, Ms. Svetlana, you could see that from inside, but in general, what I've heard from all of that, it was less than in some previous elections, right? Like talking about some topics, and it's a good signal that this can be, can be like that. Well, not to make too much politics. I mean, not to complicate the processes. However, this is complicated, but as we can see, it is possible. And what disturbs me personally, and that worries me a lot, that is some virtual world in Europe and Poland as well, that doesn't see what all the intelligence services are speaking of. Attack of Russia in the nearest years, and in spite of that, the topic of defense of Poland and creation of proper conditions, don't repeat Ukrainian mistakes. Don't repeat Ukrainian mistakes. When people think of the best, they are trying to avoid the worst, and this comes. So it's not the topic of today's discussion. However, we can feel the same thing as we had, and we face totally different realities where we cannot even have the elections. These are the new thing. You are totally correct, because actually in Poland we have to understand that it might happen that first of all we are not electing the president, but we are electing the commander-in-chief of Polish army in difficult circumstances. Unfortunately, we are forgetting about that very often. Yeah, we in Ukraine Crisis Media Center, we had, thank you very much for the initiative. We had very interesting thing. The cycle is coming to an end, as it was mentioned, and maybe it just starts. And now the president elected during the war, maybe the president during the war will impact the configuration of political landscape for the first time since 90s, seriously. Choice of Valencia and the advocate of Ukraine who just did a lot. Maybe that is how that will happen, but the fact that the agenda in Poland of these elections is just duplicating, well, not duplicating, but it's repeating a lot of things that happen in Germany, etc. So some general issues that disturb all of us, and not many issues with the perspective. We live one day in Ukraine, one day in Poland, so we want to unite our efforts, Ukraine and Poland, and to look into the future. And I will say even more, in the future, I personally think that other way than joint military defense and safety union of Ukraine, Poland, and Great Britain, nothing else. If we are talking about the threats in the future, and believe me, when all the politicians, no matter who will be elected, they just understand what they will face in their president term. So then what Mr. Magda said, certain like Polish citizenship, etc., it will go totally differently. So we don't know what will happen. But in any case, Poland has shown democratic, sustainable model, and we'll see what will happen in the second tour. We have these calls, and you are talking about that, more radical right sector, but it's not the unique moment for Poland. It's a tendency for the whole Europe. And I believe, and I always repeat, that there are not many nations on the European continent that can stand their ground. And I will say my opinion, the army of a million, well, they Only Ukraine and Poland can have such army. No one else in Europe nowadays will not have 1 million of defense. And in Poland now I have some questions whether Poland can count on the fact that they have understanding of such possibilities. Very interesting discussion today. I am very, very grateful, and I think that, well, of course, no one is pretending to get the documents, like Polish documents, and you are saying you will not refuse. But the topic of Ukrainian-Polish relationship, we would just support that in Ukraine Crisis Media Center and colleagues who are doing that professionally and also in different centers and different institutions, state and non-governmental. I am just supporting that because it's the country that is closest to us in terms of territory, and we just have to watch the situation attentively, because sometimes when we are addressing this during elections, but we forget that building such partnership, strategic partnership, by the way, we have the defense agreement between our countries, it requires thorough and sustainable work on state and further levels. You made your efforts today. Thank you very much, Mr. Anatoly, Stanislav, Yevhen, and now we have our local representative from Uzhhorod, Pavel, and Ms. Svetlana. She was showing the problems to us. We've heard the problems as well. And I think has a broader agenda. And I think that we will return to that topic again. Thank you very much for your patience, for listening to everybody who is here in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. I cannot just finalize. I'm asking you, if you have no issues, no questions urgent, if somebody has the question that we cannot leave without answering, that you can ask it to the participants. But we have used all of our time. Thank you very much to all of you. Now we will discuss in between all of us this topic. See you. And I think that those who will watch that, not just in Ukraine, but also in Poland, they will be interested in this discussion. Thank you very much.